Hey everyone, it's Brooke, and I'm here to do my second part of my July wrap up. These are the last 5 things I read in the month, and it was a pretty good latter half of the month, I have to say. There was one sort of mediocre thing, but everything else was pretty much a solid 4-star read or higher. The first thing I want to talk about is a novel that I really enjoyed, and it was something that I don't know, I didn't expect to like as much as I did, and I really bought it on a whim. And that is Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. This I heard about on a couple of Book Riot podcasts. It is a book about werewolves, which made me a little bit wary, as werewolves and vampires and things have been sort of overdone in the past decade or so. But I really ended up enjoying this a lot. What it does well is it uses the idea of werewolves as sort of a literary lens to explore family. So it takes this sort of supernatural element and it really grounds itself in the ways that that element depicts family. And I think it does that just super well, very entertaining, gritty, gruesome. Jones is primarily a horror writer, and while this is not outright horror, I think this is far more of a kind of familial domestic drama. There are horror elements in this, and you can see that there's some really bloody, gruesome parts that if you're not into that sort of thing, you might have some troubles with, but each one of them is earned, and it is telling something about these people. And the story focuses on a brother and a sister who are basically in their 20s to early 30s as the story takes place. And they are tasked with raising their nephew. And the brother and sister are full shape-shifting werewolves. Their nephew, they don't know yet. It's one of those things that doesn't present itself until like around 16. So we follow through the nephew's eyes their lives from when he's about 10 to when he's about 16. Wondering if he's going to shift, but really just getting into the day-to-day life of these people and this thing that they have to live with, and they constantly have to move so that they're not found out, and they have to really kind of rely on each other and form these very intimate relationships with each other because they don't really have anyone else. And Jones's writing is beautiful. There were times when I would reread sentences because they were just so nicely done. The werewolf lore is great. It is similar to other werewolf lores, but there's little things that change it that make it really interesting. There are some really emotional moments, some funny moments. I mean, there's a lot of emotion, a lot of, just a lot about humanity, as a story like this really should ultimately be about what it means to be human. And I really do recommend it. It was such a surprise, and I think that's really what it was. Is I kind of went in like, okay, maybe, and then coming out going, oh my gosh, that was actually really good. And I think that having lowered expectations might have added to this story, but you know what? The more I think about this, and I do think about this a lot, I think it's just a really fucking good story. I think it's also worth mentioning that the author is at least part native, so if you are looking to read more from native authors, this would be something to pick up. The only short story collection I read this month was something actually I started reading in June, I think, and so I finished it in July, and that is Viral. These are stories by Emily Mitchell. This is a collection that has certain stories that kind of go beyond the natural world into certain interesting supernatural elements, some that are really grounded in reality, but they're very sort of satirical. There are stories in here that just sort of change tiny details about the world we live in and then ask characters to sort of live in that world and see how that's different. In particular, it's a story where it's a narrator talking to someone or a group of someones who are looking to visit the United States but have never been here before, and their very hilarious take on a visitor's guide to the U.S. is entertaining, and little details have changed, like the Statue of Liberty wears a bowler hat. instead of her crown. So, things like that. I had a really mixed reaction to these stories. I don't necessarily remember most of them. I guess if I think really hard, I can kind of get impressions of most of them, but for me, it was mostly a 3-star collection. There was one story in here, though, that I loved a lot. That story is called My Daughter and Her Spider, and it is about a woman and her daughter who their husband or her husband and the dad have left the family, and the daughter's not really taking it very well. She's young and she's just not handling the loss well. And so in the world that's being written about, there are these sort of like robot companions, and the little girl gets to go and pick out her own robot companion that's like a pet, but is a robot, so it can like speak to you and things to help her through her grief in this kind of period of change. And she picks this spider, this big, like big as your hand spider, to be her companion. And the story that takes place after that is creepy, but also really lovely in a very odd way. And I think that story will stay with me for a long time. And so if you could find it on the internet somewhere, I would recommend it. The other story I really liked in here is the title story Viral, and it's about a day in history where a bunch of young people, teenagers generally, climb up on something really tall and jump off, all committing suicide. And it's told after this day from the perspective of people sitting in a grief group, like grief counseling. And that was interestingly done. So there are a couple of really good standout stories, but for the most part, I think my biggest problem with this was that a lot of the stories were told first person, and I think first person is tricky, and asking each story to have its own voice is tricky when you're doing first person, because it just all ended up sounding sort of similar in tone and voice and not standing out. So everything kind of bled together. Nothing was super, it just bled all together into sort of a mediocre collection. That's the best thing I could say about it. I think it is a good collection, though, if you are interested in trying short stories for the first time, because I think they're easy. I think they have ends. I think it's a good place to start, but I think it's something that most people who like short stories will quickly outgrow. So I've been wanting to read this next book for a while, and it kept being in my brain, and I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I've had it for at least a couple of years now, and have heard mostly positive things. And we have quite a political climate going on here in the U.S. at the moment, and it was the week of the Republican National Convention. It was the week it was the week of the Republican National Convention, and which is just Trump propaganda. So terrible times, and I didn't watch any of that, but it was just everywhere. It was on all social media. You couldn't escape it. So I just wanted something to really give me something positive, but also something that worked my brain a little bit, because I just wanted to kind of, I just needed something very specific. And so I thought this was the perfect time to pick up Terry Tempest Williams' When Women Were Birds, 54 Variations on Voice. And I was so right. I loved this so much. I tweeted out that this was so much better than watching the RNC. And Terry Tempest Williams actually liked that tweet. So I recommend this so much. I think I read it at the exact right time. And it just, I don't know, I haven't highlighted a book this much in a very long time. It is based around this idea that Terry Tempest Williams, her mother, being sort of a devout Mormon lady, kept journals throughout her life. And she said, please don't read them until I'm dead. So when she dies, I think she dies of cancer, Terry goes to open these journals, and they're all of them blank. I think there's like 33 of them. There's not a single word on any of the pages. And so that just begins her down a thought process about voice and women and politics. just the world, nature, so many things she explores in here, and they're done in just little bitty thought pieces, like little miniature essays, and it's just so good. I read it in exactly one sitting, but the book just really spoke to me, and I do absolutely want to read it again one day. It's beautifully published, opens up like a journal. I highly recommend it. And then in an effort to kind of get some of my books I've had for a long time read, I went ahead and picked up Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Who knows how long I've had this? A long time. The only Shirley Jackson I've ever read is The Lottery, and I think maybe a couple of other short stories. But of course, you hear about her all the time, and I loved this book, you guys. At first, I wasn't sure. It took me a little bit to get into it, but once I was in it, and I loved it a lot. It's about these two sisters, basically, who live in this kind of small New England town, and they have a lot of money, so they've been kind of a prominent family. And one day, most of the family dies, and the two sisters are left, and they're like crazy uncle. And what happens is that all of the people who died in the family were poisoned, and the sister Constance is blamed with that, but then she goes to trial and she's let off. But the town just shuns them and is terrible and evil to them, and so they live in this very sort of insulated world. And the little sister Mary Cat is just a character that I am never ever going to forget. Mary Catherine is quite a trip. Oh goodness. And I don't want to get into it more than that, but it's very sort of psychological, and so like the inner world that's created, and the ways that these sort of like power struggles between the two sisters, and the creepiness. Oh my goodness, I don't even know. It was a really great, it felt like a haunted house story without actually being a haunted house story. Just some of the best like character study, suspenseful, kinda creepy. You know, it's just very good psychological drama from a very talented writer in Shirley Jackson. So you could definitely read this in one sitting. It's fantastic, and I have no bad words to say about it whatsoever. The last thing I read was, like the last day of the month, I picked up a comic, and that was the first volume of Black Magic by Greg Rucka and Nicholas Scott. So Greg Rucka writes Lazarus, and we know that I love Lazarus, and Nicholas Scott has done this. She did the some of the artwork for Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman, I'm pretty sure. I could be making that up. I don't think I am. But this is about witches. It kind of marries witches and like police kind of detective procedural, in that the main character, Rowan Black, is a witch and a police detective. So, and basically her world gets kind of shattered when someone shows up from some place that is against witches. We don't really know that much at this point. And he basically tells her that he knows who she is, things happen, so people are out to get the witches, but there's also people dying in her town. I don't really know how to explain it. So if you like kind of witchy tales, and it's all done in black and white, which is really great for atmosphere, except for just certain moments of like magic, they'll add a little bit of color. There's one really great page I like a lot with her eyes, where the color is really beautiful. It's so subtle, and I don't know that you can really catch it here, but it's really nicely done. I enjoyed this a lot. I do think it's a lot of setup right now. Greg Rucka is definitely trying to tell a much bigger story, but we're gonna have to wait. The back says, just to kind of make it a little more coherent, something wicked this way comes. Rowan Black knows the scent of a body burned at the stake, the power of a murderer's severed left hand, the danger of blood spilled on stone beneath the new moon. Rowan Black is a witch. Rowan Black knows that a badge is worth exactly as much as the person carrying it, that motive is overrated, that you always watch your partner's back. Rowan Black is a cop. She knows something else. She knows magic is real. The problem is, somebody else knows it too. So, very good, solid comic reading, and that was my July in total. So a good month overall, and I am well into my August reading, and I will see you guys next video with a book review. So bye guys.